In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Ionic 4 keyboard native plugin, and this will allow you to do things like show the keyboard by focusing an input field, showing or hiding the accessory bar, and we're also going to look at autocorrect versus not autocorrect for an input field. So it's basically everything you wanted to know about keyboards in Ionic. Stick around to the end, and I promise you'll be an expert on the subject by the end of this video. The Ionic keyboard plugin is for native devices, meaning that this stuff won't work on the web because there is no virtual keyboard. There's nothing to hide or show. And things are mostly the same for iOS and Android. The only difference I could find is that Android does not have the accessory bar on the keyboard because when the keyboard is up, there's the down arrow icon in order to close the keyboard. And for text input fields, autocorrect seems to always be on Android, whereas on iOS it's configurable. With that said, let's get started installing and running this thing. Alright, first we need to install the Ionic keyboard plugin, and I'm just going to do that from the docs. Copy this first command right here under installation, and then paste that command into my own blank project in the terminal. Alright, that's all done. Just going to grab the second command here, the npm one, and install that as well. We need both of them in order for the plugin to work on our site. Okay, then finally down here at the bottom, I'm going to copy this import because we're going to need to import it into our module file. So inside of the app.module.ts, I'm just going to paste in that import up there and then add keyboard to the providers array down here. And that's going to allow us to go inside wherever we need to use it. I'm going to use it in the home.page.ts. Okay, so I've injected the keyboard plugin into the constructor like this. If we type this.keyboard. And then allow it to autocomplete, then we'll see all the options we have available here. There's a hide and show method, as well as a hide form accessory bar method. I'll talk about that one in a minute. That one's super important. But for now, I'm just going to make this variable public, and doing that will allow me to access that variable inside of the HTML. An alternative is just to call these hide and show methods from the TypeScript, but I think it'd be easier if we just make some buttons and then have them directly call the keyboard plugin. So here I've just made two buttons inside of the HTML, and they're going to call keyboard.hide and keyboard.show. And then I'm also going to make an input right below that, which says enter input, and that's just for testing the keyboard behavior and making sure that these methods are actually working. Another important method on the keyboard is called hide form accessory bar. So we can see that this method takes in a boolean. So here I've just added two more buttons right below the first two, and these are just going to call that hide form accessory bar with either true or false. I'll show you what that does in a second when we open up the app. Okay, so I'm just going to add the iOS platform. If you're unfamiliar with how building an Ionic 4 works, I did a whole video on that. It took forever to make, so I hope you guys will watch that. It explains all this stuff, Ionic platform add iOS, and so forth. But assuming that you already know how to do that, we're just going to press forward and then see how this keyboard works on iOS. Okay, so we're here in the app, and let's just check out some of the different behaviors. So first I'm just going to click in this input field and verify that it does show the keyboard. So it does, and that's great. Also something to note is that if I click this show button right here, it's not going to do anything. Instead, we'll just get this warning that says use input.focus and ensure that you have the following setting in your config.xml. So basically it's saying we can't open the keyboard without calling focus on a specific element. So let's just do what it says and see if we can get that input field to focus. So inside my config.xml, I'm going to add this line right here. Keyboard display requires user action. Set that to false. I'm going to add a reference variable to the input field, and I'm just going to call it my input. And then I'm going to declare a view child with that same name as both the variable name and the name of the reference in the HTML. And I'm going to auto import view child from Angular core. So this gives us a reference to that HTML element right here. And then I'm going to make my own custom function right here called show, and call that here instead of keyboard.show, just call the show method. And I'm also going to set ion input as the type of the input field and just import that up here from Ionic Angular. And then in my show method, I'm going to call this.myInput.setFocus. Okay, I'm going to build and run that once again. Okay, so the app is loaded up once again. Now when I click show, it'll actually focus that input field. So that's important to note, is when you want to show the keyboard, you actually have to have a literal element which you want the user to be typing in. And also it's important that this type, ion input, is the type of the element which you're focusing. So mine was just an ion input, but if you're using like an ion search bar or something, set that as the type instead, and then just call set focus on it whenever you want to focus it. Okay, so with the keyboard showing right now, I'm going to try and click this hide button. And while it does hide it, it can be kind of deceiving because when the keyboard is showing, if you click anywhere else, it hides it automatically. So I'm going to make a new method here to prove to you that this keyboard hide method is actually working. And this new method is called show then hide, and it's going to set the focus on the input field and then set a timeout for 2 seconds. When the timeout expires, it's going to hide the keyboard, and then I'm just going to change this ion button to call show then hide and be called show then hide. And now I'm going to build and run once again. Alright, back in the app, I'm going to click this show then hide button, wait 2 seconds, and the keyboard is automatically hidden. I'll show you my hands. Okay, show then hide. It's hidden. So it's working. Awesome. And now I'm going to demo the show accessory bar. So I'm going to first click that and then click show. So notice how this top part now has a done button. This is really nice because a lot of users don't know that they can click anywhere to hide the keyboard. And so I usually like enabling the show accessory bar up here. And then I'm going to show you that clicking the hide accessory bar and then clicking show once again does indeed hide the accessory bar. And then in most of my components, I like to just call hide form accessory bar with false, just so that the user can actually see the form accessory bar, because I think it's just a better user experience. And I like to put this in a timeout because for whatever reason, I think the keyboard plugin isn't like fully initialized at first. So I just throw it in a timeout and then it usually works. So I just put this in almost every single one of my pages because it's just a better user experience. Okay, and I also wanted to show you guys another thing that's kind of keyboard related. It is the autocorrect attribute for an ion input. So if you just slap on this attribute, autocorrect, then this will cause that autocorrect portion in the keyboard to be shown, and it's just a better overall experience for typing for the user, so I definitely recommend doing this as much as you can for like where it makes sense. Like you wouldn't want to put this on a username field or something like that. And then down here I've just put the regular old input and renamed the placeholder to regular input. Alright, so here we go. I'm going to show you that clicking show at the very beginning will indeed now have the accessory bar shown, and that's without me having to have clicked that show accessory bar, and that's because again of that set timeout function right here, which calls hide from accessory bar with false. So now the user knows clearly they can just click the done button and then the keyboard will go away. So that's really helpful. Okay, and you also might have noticed that right here, here's the autocomplete. So you can just, it's just auto-completing the sentence for me. I'm just clicking. Wait, does this even make sense? I don't think I'm a fan, but the first one was in this app. Yeah. And then the regular input does not have that autocomplete. So there you go. That's again just because of this autocorrect is on right here, and then the second one doesn't have it. It's just a regular input. Also, this accessory bar is not the thing that contains the autocomplete. It is purely for like navigation between forms and pressing done and things of that nature. Alright guys, that's it for the Ionic keyboard. Be sure to leave a thumbs up on this video if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.